Daf Ayin Hey Amud Aleph, the Mishnah towards the top. Before we start the Mishnah, just some words of introduction. What the basic discussion over here in this Mishnah in the Gemara and Suin Gemara is if you have two chotzeres, one behind the other, and the inner one has a right of way over the outer one. So the outer chotzer has access to the Rishus HaRabim. The inner chotzer does not have access to the Rishus HaRabim. One is behind the other. There's a Rishus HaRabim. The outside chotzer has access. The inner one has to pass through the outer one to get to the Rishus HaRabim. So it has a right of way. The issue over here is, does a right of way aser? Does the fact that some other chotzer, some people who are in a different chotzer, residents from somewhere else, the fact that they can walk through and have the right to pass through this chotzer, does that nullify the error that the chotzer made? Does that make it therefore aser them to carry in their own chotzer? There's three possibilities. One could be that it does not aser, regardless of whether the people in the inner chotzer are allowed to carry in their chotzer or not. The other option is that it asers, regardless if it's also to carry in the other inner chotzer or not. Or the middle way is, the middle option is, if the people in the inner chotzer have a right to carry within their own chotzer, then it does not aser. If they do not, then it does aser. So that's the basic background of the Mishnah and the basic machlokes that we'll have. The inner chotzer, if they make their own eruv, they can carry within their own chotzer. That's what's called a regel hamuteres. That's a regel hamuteres. If they did not make an eruv, and they cannot carry within their own chotzer, that's a regular asur. So we'll see the machlokes over here. Do we say a regel hamuteres, whether it's a regular that's aser, a regular who's asur, or even a regular muteres asers, the right of way, the right of passage asers? Do we say that a regular asur asers, but not a regular muteres? Or do we say it makes no difference whether it's a regular muteres or regular asura? The mere fact that they have a right of way, that they have a right to pass through the outer chotzer, that does not aser it. So zok the Mishnah. Shnei chotzeres ulefnim mizu. You have two chotzeres, one behind the other one. Irva pnimis v'lo irva chitzayna. If the inner one made an error, but not the outer one, so the inner one is allowed to carry within their own chotzer because they made an error, but the outer one can't because they did not. Apnimis muteres v'chitzayna asur. The inner one is muter, and the outer one is also. The inner one made an error that's muter. The outer one is also that it's also. But let's say the outer one made an error. So, in the absence of the inner chotzer, simply speaking, if it had just been their chotzer, they made an error. They'd be allowed to carry. But over here is that the pnimis did not make an error. So the inner chotzer did not make an error. They cannot carry within their chotzer, so they are a regular asura. Shtei and asura. They are both also. So apparently, this Shita holds that, notwithstanding the fact that the outer chotzer made an eruv and they would have been mutter to carry, but since the inner chotzer did not make an eruv, so they're a regular ha'asura, and they have the right of way, they have the right to travel, to pass through the outer chotzer to get to the Rishus HaRabim, it asers. So therefore, in this case, shtei and asuras, they're both aser. The inner one is aser because they didn't make an error. The outer one is aser because even though they did make an error, but the inner one has a right of way, and therefore it asers. If they both made their own eruv, then they're mutter, each with their own. They're not mutter from one to the other, to carry one to the other, because unless they make an eruv joining the two together, but within their own chotzer, they're both mutter to carry. Rabbi Akiva, but Rabbi Akiva says no. Nevertheless, the outer one is also. shedrisas haregel oisrata, because even though the inner chotzer is mutter to carry within the chotzer, even though it's a regel hamuteres, but they have the right of way on the outer one, so they asers. So this is Rabbi Kiva's shita, is that the right of way asers, whether it's a regular asur, even a regular muteres, but the fact that people who are not part of this chotzer have a right to walk through, that deems them to be also part of this chotzer who did not join the Eruv, and they aser, even a regular muteres asers. So Rabbi Kiva oiser aritzayner sheregel ha shedrisas haregel oisratam. But the Chum Moimrim ain't dris haregel oisratam, but the Chum say no. The inner one in this case does not aser it. Next case in the Mishnah, if one of the outer ones forgot to join the Eruv, then the Pnimis is muter, their Eruv is valid, the outer one is not valid because one of the members of the Chotzer did not join the Eruv. Mina Pnimis Eruv, if one of the inner ones did not join the Eruv, stay in Asuras, they're both also, because the inner one has the right of way. So the inner one is has the right of way, and they are a regular asura. They did not make one of the members of the inner one forgot to join the Eruv, and therefore the Eruv and the inner one is not valid. It's a regular asura, and it has a right of way on the other one, so it asurs. So therefore, shtein asuras, they're both us. The inner one is also because their Eruv is not valid, because one of the members of the inner one did not join the Eruv. And the outer one is also, even though they made an Eruv, but the inner one is a regular asura, they have the right of way, and they asur on the outer one. So the more we'll discuss this, but apparently it would seem to mean that if it's a regular asura, it asers, not regular hamuteres. If it's a regular asura, it's because the inner one, the Eruv is not valid, they cannot carry within an own chotzer the right of way asers. Tomorrow we'll discuss all of these cases. Next case in the Mishnah, Nasna Eruvin Malkamecha. Now let's say the two chatzeres joined together in an Eruv. So till now we were discussing the outside chotzer made an Eruv. The inner one made their own Eruv. Now we're discussing where they joined together in an Eruv. They put their Eruv in one place, one of the chatzeros, and one of the members forgot to join the Eruv. So therefore, the Eruv is not valid because they're all joined together and one member didn't join, so therefore that negates the Eruv because one of the members of the group did not join. Shtei in Asuras, so both Chatzeros are Asuras. The Sefer says that if the Chatzeros were only inhabited by individuals, there was only a Yochid in each Chatzer, and Strichim La'arv. They don't have to be Ma'arv together. They don't have to join together. That implies that it's only because the inner Chatzer is a regular Muteris. It's Muter. It's mutter on its own. It doesn't aser. Doesn't that imply l'chayra that if it would be aser b'mekayma, it would aser on the outer one? So the Gemara is going to analyze all of these different halachas. He also Rav Dimi, when Dimi came, he said, "Amar Rav Yanai Zudi, Rabbi Kiva, the Amar feel regular muteris b'mekayma, I say shlei b'mekayma." So the Mishnah stated the sheet of Rabbi Kiva, who says in the Mishnah that he says that with each one we have shtei chaser zul pnimis zu, irva pnimis, v'la irva chitzayna, pnimis muteres, v'chitzayna asura, chitzayna v'la pnir shtei masuras, irva zel is e'asul, zel is la'atzma. Then we say, with irva zu la'atzma, v'zu la'atzma, zu muteres v'fnei atzma, v'zu muteres v'fnei atzma. But Rabbi Kiva answers this because he answers the chitzayna shedrisas a regular israsa. So Rabbi Kiva says unequivocally whether the inner one is mutter or the inner one is aser, the passage, the right of way from the inner one to the outer one will aser. But אבל חכמים אומרים כשם שרגל המותרת אינו איסרס, כך רגל האסור אינו איסרס. But Rav Dimi said that the Chacham say no in both cases, whether the inner one is mutter or whether the inner one is aser, it makes no difference. The right of way on its own does not aser. Just because there's a right of way, we do not consider these people to be part and parcel of the chaser. They're not considered to be a resident of the chaser. They don't aser, whether they're aser or mutter in their place or not. So that's Rav Dimi Shita, that Rabbi Kiva holds in both cases they do aser, and Rav Chama in both cases it's mutter. Now the Gemara is going to ask a question. That Tanan we learned if the outer one made an erev but not the pnimis. So the pnimis, the inner one, didn't make their own erev. They're aser in their own place. Shtei masuras. They're both aser. Now, why are they aser? Why the outer one? The inner one is aser because it didn't make an erev. Why is the outer one aser? The outer one did make an erev. Must be because the right of way from the inner one to the outer one asers it. Simoni. Rabbi Kiva, my irregular asura. Why is it dafka? Because the inner one didn't make an error, and it's a regular asura. I feel a regular muteris nami must, even if it's a regular muteris, also with aser. So here it implies in this case that the inner one only asers on the outer one because the inner one did not make an eruv. Rabbanan. It must be the Rabbanan, and you see that the Rabbanan hold that only if it's aser, it's a regular asur b'makayma, the right of way will aser, but not muter. Where says loylam Rabbi Kiva, I'll tell you, Rabbi Kiva loyzu avzu ketani. What it means to say is not only in this case, but in this case as well. Meaning not only in the case where it's itself, when it says asura that it asers, but even the case where it's muter, it also asers. It's not only this, but really in both cases it asers. Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, if they made their own Eruvin, they're both mutter on their own. They both have their own Eruv, it's mutter. Time on the Eruv, why are they both mutter? Because they made an Eruv. Haloi Eruv, but if they did not, if the inner one did not make an Eruv, Shtei Masuras, then they would be both awesome. So, what does it imply from this case? It says if they both made an Eruv Zula Asma, then it's mutter. It implies if the inner one did not make an Eruv, it would also. Now, just to tell me, Rashi explains, just to tell me the basic halacha that if they both made an Eruv, that it's mutter, that's a double pasha. It must be to teach me the diuk that if the inner one did not make the Eruv, notwithstanding the fact that the outer one may have, it's also because of the right of way from the inner to the outer. Now, Tana the Amma regula muteres eno iseres, regula asuro iseres. This Tana holds that the regula muteres, if they both made their own Eruv, the right of way from the inner to the outer would not aser. But a regula asura iseres, but the regular, if they did not make an Eruv in the inner, it would aser. So Maniha, who's a Tana? Ilema Rabbi Kiva, could it be Rabbi Kiva? It can't be. I feel a regular muteris nami. Rabbi Kiva holds that even if they made an Eruv in the inner one, it would still aser. Elav Rabbanan. Must be a Rabbanan. So you see the Rabbanan do make a distinction between regular muteris and asura. And also you cannot say this because since further on it's Rabbi Kiva, must be the Reisha is not Rabbi Kiva. Gemara says no. Gemara answers this and says Kul Rabbi Kiva. It's all going with the sheet of Rabbi Kiva, not the Rabban. It's missing, and this is how you have to learn it. If they may each one made their own Eruv, Zumuteres Vifnei Atzma, Zumuteres Vifnei Asma, they're all mutter. Now, why should the outer one be mutter? According to Rabbi Kiva, even if the inner one made an Eruv, it has a right of way, it should still ask on the outer one. So this is the part that's missing. But when is it so? When the inner one made a door at the entranceway, made a door, which shows that it's separating itself from the outer, and that it's relinquishing its right of way. Then we say they both are mutter, because now, since it relinquished its right of way, the Drisas Regel doesn't answer. So Vamed Vram Shasa Daka would have made a small door. Avaloi Asa Daka Chitzayna Asa. Then Chitzayna Asura Divrei Bekiva. And if not, the outer one would be Asa, notwithstanding the fact that the inner one made an Eruv. Shrabi Kiva Aiseres Chitzayna Nesha Drisas are regular Aiseres. Because the right of way, Aseres, even if it is a regular Muter. So Chamai man Drisas are regular Aiseres. But the Chum argue. Masiv Rabbi Ami Barabaya Vim Hoyu Shal Yechidim in Srichin La'ar of the Sefer. The Mishnah said that if there's only Yechidim individuals in each Chatzar, they do not have to make an Erev to join together. Shal Rabim, which implies that if it's Shal Rabim, Srichim La'ar, they do. So what do you see from here? Alma Regel Muteres Mekaima Ein Aiseres. So you see that the Regel Hamuteres Mekaima, the fact that the inner one has a right of way to the outer one, but it's mutter on its own. It's Shal Yechidim, it doesn't also. So it's mashma Ashal Rabim. But if the inner one had Rabim, then you would say that it would aser on the outer one. So if it's a Yachid where in itself it's mutter b'mekaima, then ein shrichim l'arav. Now that can't be the shita of Rabbi Kiva, it's the shita of the Chachamim, which implies it's only because if it's shal yachid you don't have to be mar. But if it would be rabim, if there was more than one in the inner chatzar, so it would be a regal asur b'mekaima, it would also have to be mar. So almo regal mutaras b'mekaima ein riseres, but regal asur oiseres. So you see Akasha on Rabdimi Va'oid Mosiv Ravini has another Kasha. Shalkach Echad Min Achitzayna, one of the residents of the outer Chatzar forgot, and Loi Irev Apnimi Muteres V'Patzina Achitzayna Asura. The inner one is muter, the outer one is also Shalkach Echad Min Hapnimis V'Lo Irev. But if one of the inner ones forgot to join the Eruv, then we say that Shteim Asuras, they're both awesome. Time and the Shalkach. So it implies that it's only because one of the inner ones forgot to join the Eruv, so where the inner one is a regular Hasur Mekayim. Haloi Shakach, but if he did not forget, then it's a regular Muteres Mekayim Shtei Muteres. Then they would both be Muter Alma Regel Hamuteres in Oiseres Regel Hasur Oiseres. Don't you see clearly this distinction? That a Regel Hamuteres does not answer, only a Regel Asura Aseres, which seems to be not like Rav Dimi. And like he also Ravin explains what are the shitas as follows. There are three machlekes. Tana Kama Savar, the Tana Kama in our Mishnah, where Rabbi Kiva argues with, he holds Regel Muteres Eina Asura, he holds Regel Muteres Eina Asura, Regel Asura Oiseres. A regular muteris does not ask. It only asks regular asur. So the yukim that we made before in the kasha, it's therefore we accept that. The Tana Kama does say there's a difference. He is mechalik between a regular muteris and a regular asur. Rabbi Kiva Samar Afila regular muteris Oiseres and Rabbi Kiva says no, there's no difference. They both ask. The Raman Basroi Savar, but the Rabbanon, the later Rabbanon hold, Kishem Shiregel Muteres Ein Oiseres, Kach Regel Asura Ein Oiseres. This is the Shita of the Rabbanon Basroi. So this Shita that holds that there's no Chilek, that it does not Aser, in either event it does not Aser, Ein Chanami, is not the Tana of our Mishnah, it's Rabbanon Basroi. These are the ones who were not Machalik. So we have the three machlokes. The Tanakam of our Mishnah is machalik. Regular muteris also, regular surah does not. Rabbi Kiva is not machalik, says they're both also. And the Rabban Basroi says both cases, the right of way on its own does not aser.